Good afternoon to everyone. As an activist, I want to put you in a bit of out of your comfortable zone. So I request everyone, please close your eyes. And remain closing your eyes while I'll tell you what to put in your mind. So you find yourself having a discussion with one of your colleagues who is going for a field mission in the Amazon to visit your project on reforestation. So you had a very good meeting on what your colleague will do on field. So then he traveled, and after 2 days, you were eager to listen to his stories. And then at 1 o'clock in the night, the phone rang. And it was a call from the Amazon, from somebody you don't know. And that person was telling you that your colleague was abducted, together with 2 leaders of your partner organization. When you were about to ask something, the phone went dead. So you were left wondering what happened. Then after an hour, the phone rang again. And it was the partner of your colleague. And she was crying heavily, asking you what to do and what to tell their 2 small children. How will she explain this situation to the 2 children? Then the following day, you went to the office, and it was all in chaos. All your colleagues were asking questions nobody can answer. And even after 5 days, a news came, a call from the Amazon, saying that your colleague was actually abducted by paramilitary forces working with those that want to deforest, to lag, and set up ranch in the Amazon. There were witnesses, but they were too scared to speak out. And after 10 days, in spite of the effort of your government to intervene and call for a search and an investigation, there's no news. Now you can open your eyes. That's the story we have in the front line of defending our lands and resources. I, myself, was in that difficult situation until now, when I was in the front line of campaigning against mining and dams that has been destroying our lands in the Cordillera region. I was put in the military hit list, and 3 of my colleagues were killed. At that time, I cannot move around without a bodyguard. I was followed, my house was broken into. But in spite of that situation, together with my colleagues, with indigenous communities, we persevered because we don't have any choice. If we don't defend our land, if we don't defend our resources, we're nobody. Because our life is very much part of nature. We are one. Our identity, our dignity as people is very much linked to the land. And the story I'm telling you is not to scare you. The message is not to scare you, but to know that these people, we are not just numbers. We are people. We have families. We have communities. When something happens to a human rights defender, what happens also to their children? What happens also to their communities? Is one community that has a leader that was killed. That community almost lost part of their soul. And so this situation, as you already know, need to change. We know that things are going to worsen in the coming years. We know the situation in Brazil. Our indigenous brothers and sisters there are going to face ethnocide if we do not act together. Our brothers and sisters in Congo Basin are massacred, and nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to put out the truth out there on what's really happening to the stewards of lands and resources. I want to say this is a data, these are facts, but I want to go beyond facts. Where indigenous peoples are 5% of the global population, we secure 60 to 80% of the world's biodiversity because we are stewards. We sustain these resources, not just for ourselves, but for the future generation and the world. In spite of just being 5% of the global population, 60% of those killed for defending land rights are indigenous peoples. 60% out of the 5% global population. That is the risk we're facing on the ground. But we are persisting. We are persisting. And we do this because we know that a lot of you are with us. Because we are together, we know that if our resources are going to be destroyed, all of us will not be able to survive. And I hope my story is also a story of connection, that we can relate to each other, because what we need now is what was mentioned earlier, a collaboration, but a collaboration with a sense of solidarity, a collaboration of reaching out, a collaboration of understanding that we may be different culturally, but we have one vision. And that vision is to save the only planet that we have. And that is the spirit of why indigenous peoples are persevering across the world. I came from the climate change negotiations in Poland, and it's distressing that a number of states don't even want the IPCC report showing that we need that global warming should not go above 1.5. That scientific report is not even accepted by a number of states. That means they are not willing to take action to prevent that from happening. That's number one. Number two, they don't want any words on human rights. They took out reference to human rights. And we cannot isolate human rights from climate justice. We simply cannot. We, the indigenous peoples, are at the front line. We are at the front line of the impacts of climate change. But we are also the stewards of that resources. If we're going to displace because our right to our land is not secured, who is going to suffer? Is this just us or the whole of humanity? We are protecting the biodiversity, but we need security of those lands and resources, because otherwise, corporations will soon take it over. And that's still the threat that we face now. So moving ahead, what actions do we need? What actions do we need to protect the environment and to uphold human rights? From our perspective, from indigenous peoples, we need to secure the lands and resources of indigenous peoples. And I'm glad that Norad is supporting the indigenous peoples to secure their land tenure. These communities, in spite of facing threat, also need political support. We need you to speak out when indigenous peoples are driven out of their lands. We need you to call the attention of states that are violating our rights, that are saying that we are less human than you are, because that's the way we are treated. We need you to stand up and say that all of us have dignity, and we cannot sacrifice those that are actually providing the solutions to our problems. The people at the community level are the most resilient. They have adapted, they have innovated solutions to climate change. We are the most resilient. But when we are being attacked, who stands up for us? Right? And so we need to have that strong solidarity. We need to link. And we need to take action together. We need to stand up to the powers that be. We need to tell enough is enough for the fossil fuel industry. They need to divest from fossil fuels. They need to divest from coal. Indigenous peoples are suffering from those, and we said enough is enough. At the same time, we need to also bring appropriate renewable energy to communities to build their resilience. So now we have to work. What I've learned in so many ways is that we cannot be thinking of solutions from the top. Solutions are coming from below. And we need to listen to those that are providing the solutions from these communities and bring that up and link people from north to south, from urban to rural. We need each other to bring that solution out. Now, in the face of this worsening situation of those that are defending our rights, we are planning to hold a campaign to stop the criminalization of indigenous peoples around the world. Because what's happening now is that instead of us being recognized and acknowledged for our stewardship of resources, we are being criminalized. We are called murderers. We are called obstructionists of development, and we are put to jail, and that should stop. So we need your support on this campaign. We need to tell companies, don't even bother to take over indigenous lands, because that is not just for them, that is for humanity. We need to tell governments, respect diversity, respect the dignity of those people on the ground. We need to tell our colleagues to have faith and to have a solidarity to all of us that are making this place a better world. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Joan. You're making a very strong impression indeed. You feel the sympathy from the hall here, and you have a great deal of solidarity building up around the world for you. But is that enough? I just wonder, isn't there one way to sort of set down the principles of liberal societies, free societies, and engage the people who makes the suppression possible, namely business world as well, trying to drag it into this sort of, I'm perhaps pointing a very sort of leading question here, but I mean, there should be a responsibility of operations within a liberal society that you also adhere to the principles in real life, not only the business principles. Huh?
Yes, that's true. Like I said, we need to build collaboration, and we are, in fact, engaging even with the private sector. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy that we are now linking with the Investors for Human Rights, the Alliance of Investors for Human Rights. I don't know if you've heard it, but they came out with a strong statement when I'm with the other colleagues were accused as terrorists in the Philippines. They came out with a very strong statement saying that you cannot tolerate a government that is accusing human rights advocates as terrorists. And if you're investing in this country, you better rethink your investment because tyranny should not be supported. So there's a growing, so that's encouraging. For me, that's an encouraging development that a growing number of the private sector are now waking up and listening. And we need to continue that conversation with them to make that big step that finally we're all aligned in respecting and protecting human rights.
At least that message breathes some life into the glows of hope, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.